Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Vishnu Bhagavatam, Hangshva Rajacharya, Sarvasi Swadesi, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Acharya Das Thakur Ki Jai. Prem to the host Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shasdi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Govida Shama Kunda Radha Kunda, Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadava Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Jamuna Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Samavetta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to some of the devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswata Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatcharesha Tarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse 16. Punashabhuya Bhagavatyanante Rati Prasangascha Tarasvaheshu Mahatsu Yam Upayami Shashtim Maitrastu Sarvatra Namo Dvijebhya. Punah, again, Sha and Bhuyat, let it be, Bhagavati, unto Lord Sri Krishna, Ante, who has unlimited potency, Parati, attracting, Prasanga, association, Sha, also, taught, his Asrayeshu, with those who are his devotees, Mahatsu, within the material creation. yam yam, wherever, upayami, I may take, shrishtim, my birth, maitri, friendly relationship, astu, let it be, sarvatra, everywhere, nama, my obeisances, dvijebhya, unto the brahmanas. Translation again, offering obeisances unto all you brahmanas, I pray that if I should again take my birth in the material world, I will have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna, association with his devotees, and friendly relations with all living beings. Purport, that a devotee of the Lord is the only perfect living being, is explained herein by Maharaj Parikshit. A devotee of the Lord is no one's enemy, although there may be many enemies of a devotee. A devotee of the Lord does not like to associate with non-devotees, as though he has no enmity with them. He desires association with the devotees of the Lord. This is perfectly natural because birds of the same feather mix together. And the most important function of a devotee is to have complete attachment for Lord Sri Krishna, the Father of all living beings. As a good son of the Father behaves in a friendly way with all his other brothers, so also the devotee of the Lord, being a good son of the Supreme Father, Lord Krishna, sees all other living beings in relation with the Supreme Father. He tries to bring back the upstart sons of the Father to a saner stage and to get them to accept the supreme fatherhood of God. Maharaj Parikshit was certainly going back to God, but even if he were not to go back, he prayed for a pattern of life which is the most perfect way in the material world. A pure devotee does not desire the company of a personality as great as Brahma, but he prefers the association of a petty living being, provided he is a devotee of the Lord. Translation, again offering obeisances unto all you brahmanas, I pray that if I should again take my birth in the material world, I will have complete attachment to the unlimited Lord Krishna, association with his devotees, and friendly relations with all living beings. So yesterday there was some discussion about humility. We of course see in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prayers, he prays that one should be lower than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. And this is the one very important qualification for beginning devotional service and being able to continue it. So in that particular verse, Lord Chaitanya says, if you can do this, then you can always chant the holy name. And if you can't do this, the alternative is you won't be chanting the holy name continuously. You will stop. So in other words, it's a necessary component, this idea of humility, tolerance, not expecting respect, in other words, no pride, and giving respect to all living entities. So that's an essential part of bhakti itself. It's inherent in the process of bhakti. And it was also noted yesterday that the great devotees show more humility, more of this quality of lack of pride and respect for all living entities. And in fact, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there Sanatana Goswami, through his characters, of course, he indicates how the higher the devotee goes in terms of his devotional progress, the more he will display this quality of dainya, or humility. And the highest devotees of all have the greatest amount of humility. So therefore the gopis are the highest devotees, and they have the greatest humility. They consider themselves the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the lowest, even though they're in the highest position. And of course, we could say, well, look at them in the Rasa Leela, they got a little proud, so Krishna got, disappeared from them, etc. How can they be humble if they're thinking they're proud? So that aspect of what looks like pride is actually a play of the rasa only. And that's illustrated by the fact that when Krishna disappeared, then all the gopis were just very disturbed. And then Krishna was with Radha, and then Radha got a little proud, and then Krishna disappeared. And then the gopis were searching, and then they found Radha lying on the ground. And they all searched for Krishna. At that time, they all lost their pride. Completely, suddenly, all the pride was gone. And because they had lost that pride, and because they were completely surrendered to Krishna, and because they began to chant the name of Krishna very loudly on the bank of the Jamuna, then suddenly Krishna appeared. And he was very satisfied because of their attitude, and then he manifested the Rasa Leela, which is considered to be the most spectacular and highest display of bhakti or prema that ever exists in the spiritual world. So because of the humble attitude of the gopis, then Krishna was willing to manifest this aspect with them of Rasa Leela, etc. So therefore the gopis embody that great humility more than anyone else. So therefore it's a component within bhakti itself from the beginning until the end. So we can, of course, analyze that in terms of the very definition of bhakti given by Rupa Goswami, where he says that it is Krishna anusilanam, cultivating a relationship with Krishna, and with favorably, anukulya, that is with liking for Krishna, not hatred, as in the case of demons who have a relationship of hate. So that's not bhakti. So we're cultivating a positive, friendly relationship with the Lord, and it is without other desires than the desire to simply please Krishna. So if we have pride, we cannot manifest that type of bhakti. If we have pride, we will not serve Krishna and try to please him without trying to get something for ourselves. Automatically, we'll have to get something for ourselves out of it. So that's where the pride will manifest. Why is that? It's because in order to express that pure love with no tinge of anything else, we have to give up our false ego. We have to give up our false identity. We have to give our idea that we want to enjoy anything. So when we say anya abhilashita shunya, devoid of other desires than the desire to please Krishna, that means that we have no desire to get our own enjoyment. And the problem with all jivas in the material world is they want their own enjoyment. That's their first ignorance. We don't want the Lord there for enjoyment, we want our enjoyment. That's ignorance. Based on that ignorance, you get the ahankara. I am a material, I am separate, I am a material body. And then we go on and have desires for getting enjoyment. So the whole of material existence is based on the fact that we are proud and we're trying to independently enjoy. And that is exhibited by all the living entities, from the smallest little germ up until the devatas. They're all stuck to this conception of a body. I'm a body, and I'm trying to survive, and I'm trying to enjoy, and I'm trying to reproduce, and I'm trying to do all this in the material. It's all based on this idea of separateness, separate enjoyment. So as long as that exists, you cannot have the opposite, that is prema, or bhakti, or even the beginning of bhakti. It cannot exist. So therefore the very concept of devotional service is one of a rejection of that ahankara, pride, desire for enjoyment, etc. Of course, when we start devotional service, we are not perfect. So we have not attained that level. And so we do have false identity. We do have some desire for enjoyment. We do have false ego. We do have pride, whatever. But at least we have to have some initial recognition that God is supreme and we are the servant of God. That has to be there. If that's not there, then we cannot do anything devotional service at all. If that is there, we still have our desires or whatever, then we can begin bhakti. So that is what sadhana bhakti is. We're doing the activities of bhakti, but we're doing them in an impure state where we still got all of these desires and attachments, etc. But through the process of bhakti itself, these things get destroyed and minimized gradually until in the state of prema, then it's all for Krishna, nothing for the self. So that's the state of pure humility then. And the devotees in the beginning, because they got their anarthas, they got their desires, etc., they won't be completely humble. But they got the trace of that by the fact that at least they're accepting the position of the Lord as supreme and I'm his servant. At least that much they accept. So that's the humility in the beginning. Later on it can increase and as they go on and become a natural aspect of their service to the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada often translates bhakti as devotional service. So service means that we are serving. That means we put ourselves in a lesser position, inferior position, automatically. We're not trying to be served. So bhakti itself, the definition is service, not to be served. To serve, not to be served. So therefore that humility is naturally there. But, as I said in the beginning, it's not perfect. And therefore devotees in sadhana will display opposite qualities. They will display pride, they will display other anarthas and attachments, etc. But the more they advance, the more these attachments will decrease until they reach a perfect state. So how do we reach that perfect state? By the performance of bhakti itself. So the performance of bhakti has two components, which are indicated in that Krishna Anusilanam, cultivating a relationship with the Supreme Lord. So we accept the Lord, we're cultivating a relationship of favorableness, that is service, and how do we do that? So there's two aspects of that. One is the emotional aspect, which is called bhav-rupa bhakti. But that's difficult for us to express because we just got a little acceptance of Krishna. We don't have any love at the moment. But if we get to bhava and prema, that is very prominent. So that type of bhakti is there, but it's very small in us at the moment. It's doing sadhana. But the other aspect is called cheshta rupa bhakti, or the active aspect of devotional service. So that's obviously there in our activities where we engage our hands and our feet and our voice and our tongue and whatever in devotional service. Of course, we're using that material body there, material senses, material mind, etc. In the highest state, those devotees develop a spiritual body and they engage their spiritual senses, their spiritual organs, their spiritual hands and feet, their spiritual eye in serving Krishna. So that's the active aspect of it. So in our state we have this emphasis upon the active state because we don't have that bhava. But by doing this active state, cheshta rupa bhakti, eventually that bhava also manifests in bhava and then in prema. So bhava means that bhava, the bhava rupa bhakti, when you get to the stage of bhava after sadhana, then that relationship with Krishna manifests. And it could be Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, or Madhurya. But until then, we engage our senses, so to speak, in devotional service. It's the cheshta rupa bhakti type. So in that cheshta rupa bhakti, we have different items, which Rupa Goswami outlines in Nectar of Devotion. Among them we have hearing, using the ear. And we have chanting, using the voice, and we have seeing the deity, using the eye, tasting prasadam, using the tongue, etc. We have archana, where we engage the hands and the feet, etc. So we have all sorts of ways of engaging our senses. So one of them also is namaskara, from which we get here, namo dvijebhyo, I offer my respects to the brahmanas, to all the brahmanas. So namaha indicates offering of respect. So this is called namaskar, the anga of devotional service that we're performing, the activity, namaskar, which includes what we call pranama, lying down on the ground, which we do when we see the deity. So that's why we do this. So people may often wonder about that. Why are we always lying on the ground or rolling on the ground, etc. But we see, of course, it's partially there even in Christianity, where they kneel on the ground, I think, in the church or something like that. They kneel down or something. Maybe the Orthodox Church does that. They kneel down, whatever, like that. So, like that. So, this is a more extreme form where you fall on the ground. It's called, what we picturesquely call the dandabat, which means literally like a stick. You fall like a stick on the ground, so you're flat on the ground. So that's the one way of doing the pranama. The other way is you just offer your head on the ground and your knees and your head on the ground. That's another pranama. And if you can't do that, then you just do this. This is pranama also. So there's different alternatives for different people to do this pranama. So this is the namaskar, which is we can say a greeting and a respect. And it also involves a prayer, because the namaskar should include the voice. The mind is there, the eye is there, the voice is there, the hands are there, the feet are there. You put the hands and the feet on the ground. Your mind is dedicated to the Lord's surrender, and your eyes are closed, and your voice is supposed to speak something. So what do? Then we offer a prayer that has namo in it. We say Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasad. We offer respects to Prabhupada. This is namaskar prayer. And so when we offer our respects to Prabhupada, then we offer this prayer also. So the prayer is included in this whole namaskar. And if you can't do that, at least you can say like this and you say the prayer, whatever. So that's namaskar. So it includes both things, the physical aspect of offering your whole body, and then the vocal aspect of uttering the prayer for the particular persons, like the brahmanas or the Krishna or the devotees, etc. So that is utilizing the whole body on behalf of the Supreme Lord, whereas others are offering individual organs like the eye or ear, serving using the ear, serving using the eye, or using the voice, etc., or the tongue. But this namaskar is offering the mind and the body. I'm going to say all the senses because they're all kind of stuck on the ground. So in other words, this is a type of surrender also, where we offer all of ourself, our body, with the senses, our mind, and the Atma to the Supreme Lord. So the very act itself of falling down on the ground indicates that we are servant. We are inferior. So we put ourselves in the physically the lower position on the ground, so to speak. Which we'll find is, you can say, universal in the world among human beings. We have the higher person and the lower person, so the higher person sits on the big throne and the little person's down here on the ground again. That is literally represented by offering your respects and putting your head on the ground. So that shows great humility. Or we are the servant of the Supreme Lord. Or we are the servant of the Vaishnavas, or we are the servant of the Brahmanas, etc. So it has a very physical meaning to it. So it tends to become a ritual kind of a thing you do, and you just do it as a custom like that. But it has its origin in the actual idea of trying to surrender. So that is why when we do these actions, we should include the mental aspect at least, and the devotional aspect. That when I'm doing this, I am trying to surrender to the Lord and give up all of my false ego and my material identity and offer everything to the Supreme Lord in His service. That's the idea behind it. So when that goes together with the actual act of the namaskar, then it becomes a very potent aspect of devotional service. That's the very definition of sadhana bhakti, to engage the senses and the body and the mind in serving the Lord. We don't have the bhava aspect, but we have that aspect, along with our attempt to develop the bhava by understanding that Krishna is supreme and we are a servant. So in the very act of namaskar, we're trying to surrender. So then the counter thing is there, that even if we don't have the attitude of surrender, but we go through the act, at least we get some benefit from the act. Even if the devotion is not fully there, we're not thinking of what we're doing, we're just doing it out of habit. We get some effect, just like for the name, we chant it accidentally, we get effect, so we do that. So that's also there just by doing it. And by doing it, again, hopefully our mind will also start to develop that humility also. So the action, physical action, can lead to developing the humility within the mind and within the Atma itself, and help us develop that attitude of being the eternal servant of the Lord. So therefore it may be a ritual, but again, by doing it, it becomes a habit for us that we recognize ourselves as the servant of the Supreme Lord. So this is one way in which we can perform devotional service, and because that humility is an aspect of bhakti itself, we'll find that often this type of namaskar and namo, etc., as nama namaha, etc., is often uttered in our scriptures and among the devotees, because it is inherent in the nature of bhakti itself. So that's one aspect. Of course, we have so many different types of ways in which we can begin to surrender and recognize our position as the servant of the Lord. For us, following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the main way and the most powerful way is chanting the name of the Lord. That is the Nam Sankirtan process. That is the most powerful way of doing it. That does not in any way criticize or denigrate the other aspects like namaskar, etc. But the most powerful way in Kali Yuga for everybody is namaskar. So even if you can offer respects, and even if you think it is a silly thing, whatever, and you can't do it, don't understand what it means, at least if you can chant the holy name, that's okay. As you progress, then eventually you also understand I am the servant of the Lord, and you will also offer your respects, etc. So the introduction for everybody in Kali Yuga is simply to chant the name of the Lord, however. And you do that, then afterwards you can develop all the other ways in which we can engage our senses, etc. So that chanting of the name, like this process again, is based upon that humility. That I'm the eternal servant of the Lord, that I'm not the enjoyer, I am the servant. And that is why you chant the holy name constantly, kirtaniya sadahari. If you have the humble attitude, then you can continue that process. If you have that attitude, some devotional attitude is there, then you continue the chanting of the holy name, and it has its most positive effect from that. So therefore, even in chanting the holy name, we got an aspect of this namaskar there, obviously, or humility, as an essential component to it. So that is why we say that people who chant the holy name, but they're chanting the holy name for fame and prestige, this is actually against the whole idea of bhakti, where we're trying to become lower than the lowest. And so if we're trying to become famous and more of an enjoyer out of the whole process, we're just negating the whole thing. So in that sense, the holy name becomes poisonous for us. People who do this, they make profit out of the holy name or whatever from preaching and from Bhagavat Saptahas, etc. Then that is considered to be useless, like the poison of the snake. The milk may look very nice, but it's got the poison in it, and we drink it. We don't know that it's poisonous, and we die. So, in the same way, it may look very nice, so that the holy name done very elaborately, very artistically, and very musically, and whatever. But if the person's actually a rascal or an enjoyer, then it's not going to have the right effect. Because the person behind it has got a bad mentality, so that's going to pollute or at least cover the name, so that we get all the bad stuff along with the good stuff, and therefore we get contaminated. So, therefore, the holy name should be chanted with that humble attitude also. A very, very powerful means, but behind that we should have some devotion and that sense of humility. So therefore we should meditate on being lower than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. Here in this verse, there are three things presented where Parikshit says, I should take birth in this material world, but I don't care about that. It doesn't matter if I go to Vaikuntha or I don't go to Vaikuntha. I don't go to the spiritual world. I stay in the material world, get into the material body. But I should be attached to the Lord, a Bhagavati, Rati. I should have association with devotees, prasanga, to asarayeshu. Asarayeshu means those who have taken shelter of the Lord. I have association with those who have taken shelter of the Lord. So I should have attraction for the Lord or bhakti for the Lord in my next birth. I should have association with devotees of the Lord. And I should have maitri or friendliness towards all living entities. So all three are very important elements here for the devotee. One, of course, is we want to have bhakti in the next life and the next life and the next life. That's a relationship with the Lord, which naturally takes place, because even if we don't get perfection in our next life, at least we get development of bhakti. So that's naturally there. And devotional service is dependent upon mercy of devotees. So naturally the devotee prays that I should always have association of devotees, because if he doesn't associate with devotees, he's not going to have attraction for the Lord also. So the two things obviously go together. So therefore he puts this as a separate item, because it's so important to associate with the devotees of the Lord. And then the third item, that is friendliness towards all living beings, or we can say compassion for all living beings. For some devotees, it may look a little peculiar, like we're getting into humanitarian activities or something, or sattvic charity works and things like that. But we should notice that this is often emphasized, and we see even in of course, this Shashastaka prayer again, that we don't expect respect, and we give all respect to all living entities. And if we look in the various summaries of bhakti in different places, like in Kapila's teachings, for instance, he has a whole section on how you have to respect all living entities. And if you cannot respect all living entities, you cannot be a devotee. Along with the development of bhakti, which it looks like it's an individual relationship, I'm the servant of the Lord and there's the Supreme Lord, I'm developing a relationship. It's like we're isolating ourselves from everybody else. But we can't do that, because we're among all the other jivas in the material world who are also servants of the Supreme Lord, even if they don't know it. So we are consciously developing our relationships. The other living entities don't even know it, but they are also related to the Supreme Lord. So one who is a devotee and has established some relationship with the Lord, he also must recognize the relationship of all other living entities with the Lord, that they are the servants also. So whether they are devotees or non-devotees, he has to give respect to them all, simply because they are, by their nature, jivas who are servants of the Lord. So Prabhupada makes this clear in the purport where he talks about Krishna is the father of all living beings. So therefore, as sons of the Lord, we recognize the Lord, so we're the good son. And the other people don't recognize the Lord, they're the bad sons. But nevertheless, we cannot neglect the bad sons. We have to recognize that they're also sons of sorts, and therefore we have to have compassion for them and give them some respect like that, and try to make them into good sons also, like the prodigal son. Therefore, the devotee also has this compassion for all living entities, but he may express it differently from other people. So others will express the compassion by charity works, like giving food or giving shelter or giving education, things like that. Nothing wrong with that. I think it's very sattvic. But the devotee will concentrate on giving knowledge, because that's his particular, speciality, that he has knowledge of a Supreme Lord, that we are all the servants of the Lord. So that's the type of mercy that the devotee tries to give to all the people who are suffering in this material world. That's his way of expressing compassion. Somehow or other, get them out of this ignorance and make them into devotees of the Lord. So therefore the devotee must recognize the position of all other living entities and show compassion to them at all times. So that's also inherent within the process of devotional service itself. And in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, this idea of uplifting all the living entities is quite prominent. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself wanted to deliver all living entities in the material world, and even the offenders. So that is carried on with his followers in the sampradaya of Lord Chaitanya, that we try to uplift all the living entities and turn them into devotees. Okay, any question?
It says on one side that the name of Krishna is very, very powerful. How is it then that people who chant the holy name with an enjoying spirit can chant it for so many lifetimes, and that holy name is not purifying that?
How is it purifying for them, or not purifying for them?
Yeah, not purifying that. They can chant the holy name for such a long time. I think it says thousands of lifetimes, and the holy name, it's not really purifying them if they have this enjoying spirit.
You're talking about the 10th aparad, for instance? We have great attachment to the holy name, so therefore it becomes an offense. In that one sense it's relative, because we see even the worst demon can progress in devotional service by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya or the mercy of the holy name, and that's what Lord Chaitanya's mercy is. Even the aparadhi should get a benefit. But on the other hand, we say from the devotional aspect, from our point of view, as being serious devotees who want to avoid that position of aparad, because that means we're actually opposed to the devotees and we're opposed to the Supreme Lord. So you can't go both directions at once. If I don't like the Lord, how can you expect that we're going to develop into a devotee if we absolutely refuse to recognize the Supreme Lord? Of course, the Lord, by killing the demons, he does that. They sometimes go to Vaikuntha or whatever, but willingly it doesn't really happen in most cases. So very, very difficult for a person who has that attitude. But even such persons who are very inimical or whatever, if they are constantly exposed to devotion or to devotees or to the Supreme Lord or to the holy name, they can get affected, but it takes longer, that's all. So it's a much longer process for them to develop. But it can happen, but it's a much longer process because of their attitude. So once we become a devotee, then it becomes a quick process because we're very favorable.
So with the 5 rasas from Shantanu Madura, it's possible to achieve prema in any of those rasas?
Yeah. So like in Nectar Devotion, he goes, and when he's talking about in the southern and the other sections, then he actually begins to discuss all the rasas. So Shanta is also there as part of it, because what happens is they're pure, there's no material contamination, etc. No ahankara, nothing, no material body, you can have a spiritual body, etc. And you recognize the Lord. And so there's a relationship of sorts, and you develop some ecstatic symptoms like sattvika bhavas and anubhavas, etc. And you do certain activities in relation to the Lord. So in that sense, it's a rasa. But at the same time, generally we don't really talk about it too much. So for instance, when we talk about Vrindavan, we don't talk about the Shanta rasa there or whatever. We're just talking about Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. Even Dasya we don't talk too much in Vrindavan. It's normally Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, the three upper ones. So the reason for that is that the Shanta rasa it's a rasa with all the components there, but it's not very strong. And there's not much active service. And those devotees, when they see the Lord, they appreciate the Lord because he is Satchidananda Brahman, rather than being like a cowherd boy with this wonderful form. Oh, he's Brahman, he's wonderful, he's eternal, the consciousness like that. That's how they appreciate him. So they accept the form of the Lord, but they tend to see him in terms of more of the impersonal happiness type aspect.
So, generally it's understood, as far as I understand, moving from Vaidhi Bhakti to Raganuga Bhakti is sort of the natural process. I mean, to achieve prema, can you do that?
Well, you can get prema for Vaidhi Bhakti also. Yeah, and you can even realize Krishna with Vaidhi Bhakti. But then you don't get that Vaidhi kind of makes you understand that Krishna is Supreme Lord also because of the respect, so it's not exactly Vrindavan. So there's a place called Aishvarya Goloka where Krishna is the cowherd boy, but you see him as the Supreme Lord also. It's kind of a mixture.
So those devotees who may be in Shantaras, there wouldn't be, I'm trying to understand how, I mean they would be basically just in Vaidhi Bhakti, I mean Raganuga Bhakti.
No. Basically, they would be people who had practiced great austerities, the yogis, and people who were gyanis, who gave up that process to be bhaktas, but they got a little influenced by that, so they prefer a very stable, calm relationship with the Lord, not a very emotional relationship. Whereas as we go up through Dasya Sakya, it gets more and more emotional and disturbing in a sense like that. So we find that the gopis are unmada, they're insane with their emotions, they have extremes of emotion. So the Shanta Bhaktas don't really appreciate that. They want to be very peaceful all the time.
In today's verse, there's three things that Maharaj preaches in Mahabharata. He desires that attachment to Krishna, association and compassion. This seems to be indicative mentality. All devotees. It reminded me immediately of that Aslam Mathura, with the Washerman, the garden like this Sudana. He offers a nice service, prayers, and it was offered a benediction, and this is what he desired. Sudana shows unshakable devotion to Krishna, supreme soul of all existence, friendship with his devotees, and transcendental compassion for them.
Yeah, similar. They're component of bhakti itself, all of these things.
Yes, and you see this theme a lot, seems to be indicative mentality.
I think also the idea of relationship with all living entities kind of emphasizes the humility also, that we don't put ourselves as better than anybody else, and even if they are materialists or whatever, still we understand that they also have the potential, so therefore, and that's where we came from also previously, so therefore it also helps us to maintain that idea that we're the eternal servant. Everybody else is also the eternal servant. And when we get to the gopis on the highest stage, then they consider themselves the most fallen. That they are also like everybody else. They're not anything else. They're just like everybody else. That somehow Krishna's given them great mercy. That's all. So let's say another aspect of humility, to identify all of the jivas also as the servants of the Lord.
I was wondering if you could explain why the pure devotees, through saying gopis, they feel like they're the lowest of the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
Why the pure devotee feels that? Because all they do is just think about Krishna and serve Krishna.
Well, in front of Krishna, everyone feels the most unqualified. Because of Krishna's wonderful nature, his wonderful form, his wonderful qualities, etc. So in comparison to him, the devotee feels, I'm nothing. And so the more intense love they have for Krishna, then the more they feel like I'm nothing. Because the more they have love for Krishna, the more they realize his wonderful qualities. In that sense, he is so wonderful that how can they ever approach him? So the more we realize Krishna and the more qualities we realize, and then the more we realize our own position. So therefore, it's natural we have that humility.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. The cowboy boys are a little bit of an exception because no doubt they're feeling themselves very humble, but their mood is that they have a mood that they're equal to Krishna, whereas the gopi boys have this mood that they're submissive and fallen. The cowboy boys think they can fight Krishna and beat Krishna, and they try to help him holding up Govardhan Hill. But I guess they're...
Well, of course, what about the parents? They're always superior to Krishna. So within this idea of humility, then we get these varieties, and even the gopis. Radharani is the best gopi, but then she controls Krishna. Her nature is to be the controller of Krishna. So then Krishna's, combing her hair, putting flowers in her hair, and Radha's saying, "Well, you do this," and then Krishna's doing it for her. So ultimately, Radha's controlling Krishna. So it's not that only they're subservient. Sometimes they like to control Krishna also. In fact, Chandravali is the one who's very submissive. So, but then Krishna likes Radharani better because he likes to get controlled by her. So there is an idea of control, of course, and it's very dominant in the Vatsalya rasa, where Yasoda and Nanda Elder, they think that they're controlling Krishna. But that, of course, is just another aspect. We say an aspect from those devotees' point of view, but at the same time, Yasoda and Nanda also feel themselves as being ultimately simply dedicated to Krishna, and that they'll do anything he says. So that's illustrated in the Govardhan pastime, where then Krishna says, do this, and forget about all your customs of worshipping Indra. And they say, okay, because Krishna says it, we'll all do it. So Nanda agrees to it, even though he's maintaining the tradition, etc. But Krishna is saying to do it, so I'll do it like that. So they ultimately just surrendered to Krishna. Everybody surrenders to Krishna. But according to pastimes in their mood, sometimes they'll take these different roles. So the cowherd boys, of course, are a sense of equality with Krishna, and then Krishna has to carry them on his back when he loses in wrestling or something like that, or in games. So, but ultimately, they are also dedicated fully to Krishna, and they're fully dedicated to him, and they'll do anything for him. So in that sense, they're also his eternal servants. Oh, gosh. One more.
Is it correct to say that the pride that the gopis experiencing the rasa dance is an ecstatic symptom?
Well, we can say it's an aspect. They have what are called vyabhachari bhavas, temporary symptoms like man, anger, etc. in relation to Krishna. So all this is temporary emotional states, and then it disappears after a while, And that is quite prominent in the gopis, this man, where they get angry and they have to show their ego and their stubbornness, and they don't want to listen to Krishna. So that's just an aspect of a vyabhachari bhava, the temporary emotional state. Yeah. It to increase the rasa, increase the enjoyable feeling of that particular Madhurya rasa. Okay, Hare Krishna.